In 1980, Johnson was put on trial after being blamed for having ended with the life of a man, and in his defense, he said that he was innocent because he committed the crime while he was possessed by the devil to understand the facts. You have to go back several months. Murder a guy named David tells that when he was 11 years old, he was possessed by the devil. David was a normal boy who she lived with his family. One day, her sister, she met a boy named Hry and C. They became a couple. She planned to move to a new house next to the boy. All in the family agreed to help them in the moving, including David. However, at one point, David left the house scared. House asking his parents to, they left the place immediately after he told them that while he was cleaning, one of the rooms felt a presence strange, and someone pushed him on the bed. Later, he saw the image of an entity with black eyes, which he told him that he should be careful. His family did not believe a lot in what he said, and they decided not to pay a lot of attention to the boy. But one night, David started screaming because he had seen the entity again, and house started to shake, so they took it as a sign of power of the devil. At that time, they were becoming quite familiar. Ed and Lauren Warren, a loving couple paranormal that would later serve inspiration for many films. Terror Today, they left in television your address so that people interested in your services. David's sister will contact them, decided to call the Warrens without hesitation, telling them about the case of his brother. Couple traveled to visit them, and they decided to bring a doctor to check the boy and rule out that he had mental problems once. They confirmed that David was healthy. They asked about paranormal events that the Warrens had lived through. They recommended to the family to document everything they could, because of this way they could show the evidence to the Archbishop in case he needs an exorcism for the boy. The family did what they were advised, and they bought one recorder, and camera photographs began to take turns watch over David. And one night, the boy, he started acting strange. He moved from side to side while he insulted his mother and the others present. In addition to the fact that it seemed that someone was choking him, though. While all this was happening, the father of the family began to distance themselves from them, that he never believed that his son was possessed. But he had some problem mentally. The family called the Warren, and now that they had the evidence, they advised them to perform an exorcism on David. With his help, they got a member of the church agreed to do it. So a night they took David to the chapel of the town, and with his father and several family members began to pray. Soon time, the boy began to move strange way, and he began to insult the father and his family in a HRI moment. In an attempt to help the boy, he challenged to the devil and said out loud that he would leave David's body and seize it. The Warrens were present and were upset with him because it was very dangerous to challenge a demon that way. Exorcism ended, and David seemed to have returned to normality, followed his life calmly and no worries, now that everything was well. David's sister finally moved out definitively with HRI to another house. He got a job at a veterinarian, and she became friends with Alan's landlord. 5 months had passed since the exorcism, and one afternoon David's sister was planning to spend the weekend with HRI and his sisters and the landlord of the house. They started drinking some alcohol, and when they saw that they were already somewhat past drinks, HRI wanted his sisters left that night. They called David's house, and the boy answered phone was about his sister, who she was crying, worried. Since her HRI boyfriend had stabbed and killed Alan's parents, went to the place to see what had happened, and there too. The police arrived later, finding the Alan's lifeless body while he had escaped through the forest. A patrol caught up with him and arrested while at the HRI police station. He said he did not understand the reason for his arrest, since he claimed not to remember anything when they told him that he had killed Alan. He refused to believe that was true. In the family, they began to believe that the demon that had possessed David had transferred to HRY during the exorcism, causing him to have no control at the time he murdered Alan. In the news, the case was made famous because it was strange to hear that the culprit of the crime was considered innocent, with the excuse that he was possessed at the time of the events. Family was determined to prove that Hartry was under the influence of an evil entity when he committed the crime. They hired a lawyer. But this one first. After agreeing to defend them, he decided to gather a little information to verify if it was possible to do something. He met with the Warrens, and they told him, they said that HRI was innocent since a demon had taken control of him and made him do what he did. Even him, they showed him his famous room in which they kept paranormal objects, the cases they had been in. They also showed him recordings that they did to David, including the day of exorcism. With this, the lawyer believed that it was possible to demonstrate the HRI innocence. The case became even more known because it was confirmed that they would try to defend HRI with the evidence of exorcism, and the Warrens' Apo also supported the idea that HRI was innocent. A journalist asked the Warrens to lend him some of the exorcism recordings for put them on the radio, and some people who listened to the audios, they felt intrigued, while others, it seemed ridiculous to believe the story of demonic possession. But everything changes with the testimony of Carl, the brother greatest of David, who disproves all the story created by his family first. He assures that it was not the classic family happy as they wanted to make the world see. Besides the fact that his mother was not so religious as she seemed, and she just started to wear scapulars and make rosaries. After what happened to David, he was 15 years old when his brother went supposedly possessed. But there was no said nothing until today, since he felt that he had to do justice for Alan, that he was an innocent man. He says that in the past, the first day that the Warren visited his house, they talked to his mother and David as if they were giving instructions on what they had to do to appear a possession. To the few days, David started to behave just as they and their family had said, focused on recording everything, as if they would like to make a show with that. But Carl found it strange that one day, while his brother was possessed, yelling rude words at his mother, suddenly his father arrived, angry, stopped them, because everything seemed like a farce, and at that moment David calmed down, and he didn't say rude things to his father. Sometime later, the murder of Alan, but Carl never believed that this had to do with the alleged possession from his brother, since he knew that he had always been very possessive of his sister, and there were rumors that she had had an affair with Alan, which had bothered HRI, so he suspected that the motive for the murder, it had been due to an attack of jealousy and not for a possession on the Day of Judgment. The Warrens and the priests who witnessed the exorcism, but the jury determined that the story of demonic possession was not an acceptable defense. They accepted the evidence. So now, the only option they had was to say that HRI killed Alan in self-defense. The court ultimately determined that he was responsible for culpable homicide, and they assigned a sentence of 10 to 20 years. In prison, David's mother felt that she was an injustice, and she wanted to tell the history of possession to the world, that she took the opportunity to go on television together. The Warrens went to Hollywood, and she seemed like she was having a good time. Warren offered to write a book based on their story and told them that the writer they hired would be rich, exaggerated, or change the story a little, since the Warrens wanted it to sound more terrifying. In the end, the family, they gave $4,500, while the Warrens won about 81,000 plus movies like The Conjuring for those that follow winning. They say the Warrens were scammers who managed to profit from the stories of the people. Carl confesses that once his mother died, they searched his belongings and found a notebook in which she wrote down several things in a note. He said that already she had given the medicine to her family, for which upon investigation they discovered that her mother put a sleeping substance in her food without them knowing. Problem is that this substance in large amounts could have effects. Side effects such as hallucinations could explain the behavior of David. At that time, Carl assures that his brother was never possessed and that HRI neither. While David continues defending the fact that what he experienced as a child, he was a demonic possession, leave me in the comments what you think.